And I think what we're going to be doing today is that we're going to be exploring an interesting area of Hebraic life. One, in fact, that if we get right, what begins to happen is that our relationships and our lives become profoundly better. Hello, yeah. Sister Linda, I see your hand.
I had a question. How is it determined? What is the process of a man selecting a second, wife? I know you pointed out in scripture where it's
Mm-hmm,
acceptable here in
mm-hmm,
Second Samuel. What is the process, the proper
mm-hmm.
process for that to occur?
Well, let's talk about the first wife. So the process of selection of the first wife usually is an arrangement of some sort. Um, Men get very offended by a woman having interest in what they have, and it's fascinating to me because that is exactly how fathers did it before. What does he have? Who is he? Who is his father? Who is his family? Right.
Mhm.
Um, so I have a BMW. I live in a mansion. I have a swimming pool. Um, I have a TV room. I have a pool room. I have any number of rooms you can think about. And here's this young man that comes to my house who has nothing. And so I like the young man, but he has nothing. He's a
Mhm.
good-looking young man, but he has nothing. He has an education, but he has nothing. And so I'm like, well, listen, we can come and we can have a chat, right? But you can't be talking about marrying my daughter because you ain't got none, buddy,
Mhm.
right? What does your father have? Well, my father has a yacht. He has a this. He has a that. Well, now we talking. Do you follow what I'm saying?
Mhm.
Because we know that the first thing that's going to happen in a relationship that's going to tear that relationship apart is the day that your wife cannot eat. She can't go to the groceries. She can't pay the bills. The mortgage is due and there's no money.
Yep.
So initially, what would happen is that the father and the mother would be looking for a wife for the son or a husband for the daughter. So that's initially, right? Okay. In other words, he's come to age now and they don't want him to get stoned because he's noticing these girls and stuff and he wants to avoid him getting in any trouble. We hook him up early. So now you've gotten to the point where you have got let's talk about Sarah and Abraham. You've come to the point where your wife is beautiful, but she's past she's gone through menopause. She's not particularly interested in having sexual intercourse. uh, and the guy is he's having these issues. And so the wife says to him, why don't you get another wife? Have you given any consideration to so and so? In other words, the wife is now making a decision about you having another wife because of her circumstances, because of your circumstances, the household circumstances. In other words, there are a lot of other conversations that are going on. So this is not just about sex. This is not just about companionship. Sometimes it's about children. Maybe the wife is not able to bear children, but ultimately, she is the one that begins to give um, acceptance to a person that she feels comfortable sharing her husband with. Does that make sense to you?
Yes. So most of the people that practice having multiple wives, there, I don't think that is happening.
Well, I don't know most of the people who are having.
I
Uh,
mean, within our culture. I mean, the way.
well, this is what I'm saying. So if you want to go, Moreh and I, for example, we've gone to Israel, and one of the people that I've been able to see is a gentleman called Sheikh Ayid Abadid. Now he's a sheikh, right? So he oversees a fairly large community, and he
Mhm.
has three wives. Now he can afford to to provide for those three wives. And so he has his house, and then you have the three wives, and they have their houses and so on. And two of them have children. There's one that's older, so she will be his first wife. And so she's the one that then has to make a determination as whether she thinks she can get along with these other two young ladies or not. And what was very interesting to me, and this is just giving a little bit of context, what was very interesting to me is when I first saw them, I saw these two girls laying down on this older woman that was old enough to be their parents, their mothers, sorry, right? And I asked the question, so is that their daughter? She says, no, that's not her daughter. Those are Sheikah Eid's two wives. And I'm thinking to myself, but the two girls are lying down on her. So the husband's sitting, and she's sitting next to him. And then you have these two girls that are laying across her leg. And I'm thinking, well, this is crazy. This is absolutely weird stuff.
So she is house lead mother, so to speak.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so she takes on the responsibility of these girls. And the other interesting thing is as needed. So what do you need this other person for? Right? You may need this other person to take care of the accounts of the business. You may need this other. In other words, it's not just somebody who comes in and it's not like a sex slave then. I mean, that's probably a very bad way of putting it, but it's not just for the sake of sex, because sex is a byproduct of the relationship. Are you following what I'm saying?
Yes, I understand.
Right. So your comment in terms of it's not happening in our communities. Well, when I was in Israel, there was a young man that was there. He's probably maybe not so young. He's about my age. And he says to me, yeah, man, I have two wives. You should try it. You should really try it. It's fantastic. So I said to him, well, tell me how this works. He says, well, I mean, we have a place. I have a 3-bedroom place, right? So I live in 1 bedroom, and my two wives live in the other bedrooms. So I said, okay, so we all live in the same house. He says, yes. Now, you see, this is where you're trying to take a Western cultural norm, right? And you're trying to implant something that benefits you in it, but doesn't fit. You follow what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Because every woman who moves into a house, whether you build a house or not, that's her house. It is just within the psyche of a woman that when you move her into her house, whether you build it by yourself and then bring her into it, or whether you build it together, it is her house. And so what you are doing by doing that is you're asking her to give up the rulership of her house, or asking this other woman that you're bringing in to submit to her in her house. That's not going to work. And if it works with grinning and bearing. So it is one thing to read the Torah and to see that you can have more than one wife, but you have to continue to ask the questions. What is the cultural embedding? Now, if I'm going to have a second wife, I'm going to have to move to Africa, where there's a cultural embedding. And then I'm going to have to become part of a society where there's a cultural embedding. So that there are supports within the culture. There are people who understand having a marriage that has sister wives, because I think this is the term that we use now, that has sister wives in it, who can counsel and there are people that you can look at and see how the relationship is working and begin to pattern yourself against that. But in Western society, who are you patterning these relationships against? Right? Now that's a kind of a long-winded way of answering your question, but
No, I
I would
appreciate the
not.
explanation though, because I think
Yeah.
that's the confusion has to be made
Mhm.
plain, and it makes it seems to be in an orderly manner, but it's chaotic
Mhm.
when
Mhm.
these things are not done correctly.
Well, if you recognize that sex is a byproduct, if you recognize that an orgasm is a byproduct of marriage, of sexual intercourse, and that is not the purpose for the sexual intercourse, there are all these other things that are parts of it, and you begin to understand that Yah has created it in a way that it brings health and wealth and so on to the family, then you don't just run off and get a wife because she has certain attributes that you find particularly sexually appealing. And then after doing that, discovering that you can't afford to support her, that you're having issues with the other, that that's not useful. And I
Right.
think to the extent that we are men, and in a very sexualized society, when we open the Torah, we see you got more than one wife, then we run off and we do that. And what it does, it causes destruction, particularly if we have children. It devastates the children. And as a therapist, that's always my concern. Whenever I have to deal with families, I tell them, listen, you can go off and get another man, she can go off and and he can go off and get another woman. But what do the children? How do the children go off and get new parents? Right. But thank you very much for your question, Sister Regina. I see your
Moreh?
hand. Yes,
Thank
please.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead. We'll follow up later.
Uh, Sister Regina, your hand is up.
So you're saying that these sister wives, they all should have their own individual home.
Precisely. That's how it works.
Okay.
If you study the Torah, that's how it works. And this is why I drew your attention this morning to Sarah's tent. You remember I stopped and I drew your attention to Sarah's tent? That Isaac brought Rebecca into Sarah's tent. His mother had passed.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Okay.
So this is not something that you see initially. Initially, as you're reading the story of Abraham and Sarah, you make the assumption that they're living in the same tent. They're not.
Mm.
Abraham has his tent. Sarah has her tent. The Egyptian lady he got married to, she had her tent. And this notion that he put her away, that is not consistent with Hebrew culture. He did not put her away. She was not cast off. She was moved outside of that specific perimeter because Sarah is the one that she was the first wife. So she said, no, you need to move her out. You need to move her away from here. Right? I don't want her to serve me anymore. You need to move her away. And he went to Yah complaining, and Yah says, listen, you didn't come to me initially. Because initially I said I was going to give you a child through Sarah. But you and Sarah decided to do your own thing. He says, so you go follow the instructions that Sarah is giving you. Right? So she needs to have her own house. And this is why I said that many of us on the platform here would be disqualified from having a second wife. Well, I would love to have a second wife. Matter of fact, I'd like to have a third or fourth wife. But I am disqualified from doing it. I don't have the money for it. I don't have anything any of the prerequisites for that. With the exception, of course, that my wife might say, okay, well, you go ahead and stop bothering me. But yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Okay.
All right, let's try and see if we can finish up. Sister Nalo?
Okay.
There you go.
3.
Uh-huh.
Yah hates divorce.
Mm-hmm.
Is that Malachi?
That's Malachi.
2:15, 16.
Uh-huh.
And did he not make the two one. Yet had
And did he not make, I inserted the two. And did he not make the two one?
Yet had he the residue of the Spirit. And wherefore did he make the two one? That he might seek a godly seed. Therefore,
Now he might do what?
That
Now
he
he
might seek a godly seed.
Now pause for a minute. Remember when we were looking at this earlier?
Gain.
God made us in his image and likeness. And then he said to Adam, go, Adam and Eve, he says, go and multiply and produce seed. Remember that I said the purpose of marriage was not just to produce seed, but to produce godly seed.
Okay.
All right? In God's image and likeness. And here's what it's saying. It says, did he not make one? Yet had the residue of the Spirit. And wherefore did he make one? So the question is being asked. So why did he make? That he might seek a godly seed. And then it says, therefore take heed to your spirit, to your connection with the creator of the universe. And let none deal treacherously with who? And let none deal treacherously with who?
Against the wife.
Or against whom? Against the wife of
AliYahu.
Against the wife of
AliYahu.
For the Lord, the God of Israel says what? I
hate divorce. One with violence with his garment. So
one covers violence with his garment. No, this is a metaphor, right? And it's kind of a difficult metaphor to understand, that you're covering violence. That you're covering violence with your garment. But if you're going to understand the metaphor, this is what it's saying. Yah made you one. You are one. One in flesh and one in spirit. And when you start to tear that relationship apart, you're tearing the relationship apart. Because that's what divorce does. It tears. It's tearing it apart. And Yah is saying what you're doing is you are made one, so you are one. And what you're doing is that you're incorporating violence. You're tearing apart yourself, and this oneness you're tearing apart. But notice what it's saying. It says, and let none deal treacherously against the wife of what? The wife of thy youth. In other words, she is no longer, she no longer welcomes you to her bedroom because she has passed that. And so now you have this other young lady or other young ladies that you can have sexual intercourse with. They're young, they're vibrant. And this wife is quite happy to sit and maybe do crochet and have these long, wonderful walks with you and have these wonderful conversations. And you've now gotten it in your head, well, she's not really sexy, man. So, yeah, I need to move on. This is precisely what Yah is talking about. And Sister Linda and Sister Regina, this is what Yah is talking about. Right? That the reason you want to have a second wife is because the first wife is not so sexy, and Yah says, listen to me, man. and this is to the men, right? Because Solomon deals with this issue as well. Solomon says, do not forget the wife of your youth. You know why he says that? Because when you get old and sick and tired and gray, you know who's the one that's going to be there for you? The wife of your youth. Because now you can't have sex 3 and 4 times a night. So all these young girls that you got now, they're now looking to see how they can escape from this relationship. And Yah is saying, do not treat your wife, the wife of your youth, with treachery. And Solomon says, do not forget the wife of your youth,
Don't have the extra one on.
who has brought you to success, who has engineered your success, who has been there in your times of struggle, and now you are successful. You are looking to move her out of her place. And Yah is saying, listen to me. And this is an instruction. Yah is saying, if you treat her that way, he says, I'm going to treat you the same. I'm going to cut you off. And I've seen so many men that have had a wife through the struggle. They have developed means, and now they've gone off running around. And if they're not very, very, very careful, that same wife, which is often the ex-wife, is the one that has got to take care of them when they're ill. And sometimes they're not too old either, but life happens, right? All right, Sister Nalo, let's see if we can finish this up.
Sheree, what is it, darling?
3. Dishonoring a virgin in Israel. Deuteronomy.
And again, this is truncated. So the full, please read the full text. Sister Nalo, please. Sorry.
Dishonoring a virgin in Israel. Deuteronomy 20, 13 through 19. If a man marries a virgin and brings up an evil report about her, the father and mother shall bring the tokens of her virginity to the elders.
All right, so I'll tell you the story very quickly. This should tell you that a virgin within the Israelite community is important. You often hear people saying that the Bible is a male-centric, male chauvinist document.
Okay.
And the reason it is that way is because the men are the ones that are doing all the mess. And so Yah is speaking directly to the men. You got to stop this. You have to stop that. You have to do this. You have to do that. Nearly every instruction is to the man, because you're the ones messing up. Right? So here's the story here. So a man gets married to a woman. He goes to bed with her the night, and there's something about her that he doesn't like sexually. And he gets up next morning and he goes and claims that she's not a virgin. Now, to make that claim in Israel is to expose the woman to being stoned. That's capital punishment, right? She's going to get put to death. Everybody with me?
Okay.
Because of all the science that we looked at just now. Yah says, don't do that. It's just confusion. So here's a young woman who plays the fool and makes it seem as though she's okay. And then she goes and gets married to this man. The man has sex with her, discovers she's not a virgin. And so there's a big, big issue. Let me tell you a little bit, before I continue with the story, let me tell you a little bit about this notion of virginity. When a woman has her first sexual experience, her hymen breaks and she bleeds. When a man has his first sexual experience, the foreskin recedes off the head of the penis and he bleeds. In the Torah, in our culture, that is a blood covenant. And every blood covenant is followed by this idea of olam. Does anybody know what olam is or how it's translated?
Forever.
Forever. So I want you to think about what Yah has done. Yah has created an institution that is forever. So when Yah says, I hate divorce, this is what he's saying. I have created this institution that's forever. It's a blood covenant. It is sealed in blood. And so what Yah had to do is Yah had to grant divorce because this is what the men were doing. And so how do you now test if a woman is a virgin and the husband has gone in onto her? 3-4 days later, she's beginning to heal. 7 days later, she's healed completely. And he goes and reports, look, I've been thinking about this for the last 7 days. I tell you the truth, I can't do this. This girl was not a virgin. Okay? And it has nothing to do with her virginity. It has to do with the fact that there's something about her that he does not. Because remember, in Israelite culture, you're not really seeing a lot of the women. You don't know if they have big behinds. You don't know if they have large breasts. You don't know anything about them. Okay, you can't see anything. But he goes in the night and he sees all this stuff and he decides he does not want her anymore. Well, Moses dealt with that. It's called the token of virginity. The token of virginity is a white cloth, right? And the father delivers that cloth to his daughter. And that cloth is put on the bed in which that marriage is to be consummated. And when she bleeds, she's supposed to allow, by whatever means, her blood to get on that cloth. She rolls that cloth back, and in the morning, the dad comes and knocks at the door. And that cloth is given to her, and that protects her from her husband ever saying that she was not a virgin. So that cloth saves her life. So when this claim is made, father goes and gets this token of her virginity and brings it to the elders. Now, this is not a claim that you make easily in Israel. You make that in Israel, you are in big trouble, buddy. Because what happens now is that you have to pay, I think it's 100 shekels. If you read the rest of the text, it is 100 shekels, silver shekels you have to pay. All right? So you're paying this to the father. There's 100 shekels in silver you have to pay it. And then you can never get rid of her. You understand what I just said?
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Okay.
So if she doesn't have any bus, if she doesn't have any behind, if she doesn't have anything, you cannot get rid of her. You are stuck with her. You will never be able to get rid of her from that simple treachery. And so, as you study the Torah, you understand that Yah wraps this entire business within a cultural and social context and construct that works, and that works very well, and that's intended to work. If you going on to if you get married to a girl, and remember in Israel and Eastern cultures, particularly among the Bedouin, Abraham was a Bedouin. The virgins are wearing veils, so you don't actually get to see them. So not only are they wearing all of this clothing that covers them, these inner garments and then the outer garments that covers them, but the girls are also wearing burqas or they're wearing veils. You remember the story of Isaac and Rebecca? When Rebecca jumped down off of the camel and put her veil on? You remember the story of Yaakov? When he went and had sex with Leah and didn't even know that Leah was Leah and not Rachel? Because they were veiled. And so what does Yah say? Yah says, all right, okay, so you really think that this didn't work out for you? He says, well, I've given you the possibility of having another wife. So what's your fuss? Right? But it's all shrouded. Shroud is the wrong word. It's all built and constructed with this structure within a culture that makes sense, that makes perfect sense. Here we are, Q&A. So I got a hand. Let's see, I see Abby and Leo, your hands up?
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead.
Do all women bleed? at first sex?
They're supposed to.
I heard.
If they don't, there's an issue.
Do all women have that? I mean, I understand not.
Can't you
Yes,
lose
they do.
during horseback riding or something like that? Can it be broken like other is? So how is that even valid?
Yes, you can. You can horseback riding and so on. And the question was, how is it even valid?
How would you then be able to prove that you're a virgin if you have a horse? Because your virginity is gone. So are you not valuable anymore?
Well, it's not a question. It's not a question of not being valuable, right? That sounds like a discussion that you can have with your husband. You know, I've never. Remember what virginity is about, right? Virginity is not about the hymen. It's about the DNA. Everybody following me? Is everybody with me?
Okay.
Virginity is the protections that have been placed around virginity is about DNA. It's not about the hymen. All the hymen does is just protects that. Right? That passage is protected by the hymen. You can lose it horseback riding, you can lose it in different ways. But the one way you don't want to lose it is by letting another man get access to you and wear his DNA. And that's what Yah is trying to protect. So it doesn't have to do with the value of the woman. It has to do with the purpose of the whole process. Right? And every woman is... Yeah, yes, Leo.
No, just want to say that all you said, I'm in agreement with. I heard and studied that already. But the only thing I didn't recognize is that blood from both persons, both from the man and the woman, is like a blood covenant.
That is a blood covenant. Yeah, it's a blood covenant.
So it's a very serious thing.
If you notice in Israel, every covenant in Israel that is put in place by blood follows with Olam, right? Eternity. In other words, as far as you can see into the future. And this is why Yah says, I hate divorce, because Yah, remember, the science of the Torah is what Yah has devised and developed. And so when Yah has bonded a man and a woman together, he doesn't say they become one in spirit. He says they become one in flesh. And I hope I've done a good job this morning in helping you to understand this. And so whenever there's a divorce, there's a tearing of that relationship. There is an emotional tearing, a mental tearing, and there is discord that begins to occur. I mean, people die from divorce, right? I mean, they get shot, they have emotional. It's a tremendous thing to occur, right? And so Yah protects it.
So
Abby, your hand. Yes, sorry. Go ahead.
I just wanted to continue one more question or 1 more minute. Would you say then that we had false teaching and this is what caused so much corruption along that line? Now, some people
Leo,
say have to go into church and marry.
Leo?
Yes.
Leo, I want you to say after me, okay? Everything we think we know is a lie.
Everything we think we know is a lie.
Everything we think we know is a lie. All of the interconnected structures that are so well woven and plaited and knitted into this tapestry of experience and life that we have, all of it is a lie. And it was intended to be that way, right? We are living in a satanic era where there are people in leadership in every sphere of life have, to one extent or another, sold themselves to this satanic influence. And they are preaching, teaching, and some people don't know, but many of them do. and it benefits them, right? When a person can have a mega church and own a house that's $40 million, and you have people who still are in their congregations that are poor and so on, right? They're benefiting from the system, and as long as people benefit from a system, they will not be party to its tearing down. So here are we coming along now, and we're trying to build another system within an existing system, and this is tough, right? Everything you think you know is a lie. I mean, that makes absolutely no sense. But until we get to the point where we accept the fact that everything we think we know is a lie, we will continue to grope in the darkness.
Can I say something, please?
Just let me grab Ernesta. Ernesto's hand. Ernesta,
Abia and Ernesta have hands up.
Right.
Now, Ernesta can go ahead. I'll, she can go.
Okay. So I don't want to, I don't know all about, the religion, and I don't have all the answers. So maybe you can help me understand. So you said, a man, when he gets, a woman gets older, he's no longer really interested in looking at her because he may want something younger or something more beautiful. I mean, you could say that for the women as well. I may not want to look at him anymore because he doesn't necessarily look the same. Things that worked on him don't necessarily work now. So, as humans, from a human perspective, his desires and my desires may be the same. He may want something different. I may want something different. So based on the science, and science is constantly changing and new theories are brought about every day, and they coincide with the ones that came out prior, and then we find out new discoveries. So based on the new discoveries, things may change, or we may find out something else years down the line. Going back to what I said, he may want something different. I may want something different. I just feel sometimes that the woman is always pushed to the side in religion, while the men is uphold on a pedestal. His needs and his desires are sometimes the same thing that I want. I may be tired of him. I may not want to look at him. He's now swivelly and old, just like me, and I may want a younger buck. I'm just saying. So, I just feel I feel like I don't understand everything, but I'm just not in agreement with everything. I don't know if it's because I don't understand everything. I understand where the genes, once he enters me based on this theory that could possibly change later on down the line, or the science could possibly change later on down the line. It could be something different. So that's where I am on this.
So let me just respond to you briefly by saying this. Well, firstly, this is not a religion, and so that's one. Secondly, when it comes to the Torah, as it relates to women, within the Torah, and this is something that we did not get into today because that's not the strand that we took. In the Torah, women are very important. Women are supremely important within the context of the Torah. One of the reasons that you keep hearing man all the time is because the man is always the one that's getting in trouble. I mean, who's bombing Iraq? And we just need to have our heads examined, right? So that is a perception. That perception is not real. And so what we're saying this morning is there is a fundamental structure that if we follow, that these structures work well. If we don't follow them, then it lends to confusion and conflict and disaster. But I have not gone through a lot of detail because we didn't have a lot of new people here today, so I did not go off to get involved in too much of this description. But when you look at the Torah, and when you look at the arrangement with women and how the Torah talks about women and so on, and in relationships, every woman that I have spoken to so far, and I said, all right, so in the marriage, the typical Hebraic marriage, you have to give the woman a house, you have to provide for her, right? She needs to be provided with everything. She does not need to provide anything for herself. That's your job. All right? When I've explained that, when I've explained the fact that when a woman is seeing her period, she doesn't cook. Not because she's on clean. She doesn't cook because she doesn't cook. Listen, provide for her. When you understand that within the Hebraic context, that the woman is the queen, and that's the way she's treated. She's treated with honor. When you begin to understand that, I have never had a woman that says, I would not want to be treated that way. Right? The difficulty is, of course, is that we have a Western, this is what we know. We have this Western mindset, and we have all of these examples of women being treated badly, all of that. But all of this is Western, right? This is how the Europeans taught us to treat our women. This is how the Europeans taught our women to treat us. This is slave trade 101. All right, so Ernesta is going to take some time. The shock and awe of discovering some of this stuff is like, well, hold on a minute, but give it a chance.
Okay.
Right, and just bear in mind that this is not a religion. We're definitely not saying this is what you have to do. So Ernesta, you cannot have we don't have any control over your life. What we're saying is if you do it this way, Yah is going to bless it. Yah is going to bless you whether you do it his way or not, because he loves you. But there are going to be consequences to every decision that we make. And what Yah is saying is, to some of those decisions, the consequences are very negative, and I want you to avoid those consequences, so don't get involved in it. But it doesn't mean that if you get involved in stuff that Yah is going to, well, I told you so. That's us. That's not Yah.
Okay.
Right?
I agree with you. I agree with you on that, but I just feel like I can buy myself a house. So that compromise for him having another wife doesn't really work for me. I could buy my own house.
Well, in that case, then let's get married, because then I don't have to worry about buying your house. I can visit your house, I want to pull you in. I see your auntie's here. She's taking her glasses off, looking at me very girlingly. Abia, you want to make a quick point?
No, let Coach Linda go, because I'll be last after the.
All right, let me grab Sister Jem.
No, my niece and I, we think a lot alike. So she's done a good job.
Well, why don't you just get married to me? Because you got your own house already, so we don't have to worry about that. We can take it off you too. Hey, look, see, she's smiling.
Oh, you're marrying us both. Wow.
I take that back. I take that back. I take that back. Sister Linda.
Yes, I just wanted to kind of tag on to what the sister was saying about the woman's desire, because one of the things that is not even talked about even today, that when a woman, when she reaches around the age of 50, even her 60s, she has a very high sex drive, just like younger men have a high sex drive at, when they're younger. So how is that addressed? Because, it's a shock to a lot of men. They're like, whoa, like what's going on? Even women don't realize until they get into that area of their lives. And it's like, what would I do if my husband, because typically even men today, by the time they reach 50, maybe 55, they have dysfunction. And women like, well, what am I supposed to do if my husband cannot, you know, perform
We
that
get you.
particular duty?
Yeah,
Like, what
I get you.
is, you know, because now you're seeing a lot of, you know, women in that age group, they're attracted to men 10, even 15 years younger, because sexually they're balanced. But like, how is that addressed within the culture?
Well, so Sister Linda, if you would pardon me a bit of a pun, right? I keep hearing about all these women, but I've never met one yet, so I'm in trouble. I'm hearing all these women that decide sexual libido at 60. I've not met one. I'm not saying it's not the case. I'm just saying I haven't met any.
Hallelujah.
I've never had a woman that said to me, okay, so look, this is the deal, right? This is what's going on. And I'll tell you one thing. You know, every circumstance presents every situation presents a different set of a different set of benefits and so on. It presents negative and positive aspects. Every situation does. It does trouble me though that you're suggesting that when men get 50, many of them are suffering with dysfunction.
No, I'm not saying that every man, but commonly, because I'm in health field, and what we're even today, not among our people, so to speak, but even within our grouping of people, there are men in their 30s. They cannot produce. They, you know, their testosterone levels are down because their diets are not right, or even I've seen people have what is considered perfect diets. There's these people are in their 30s, 40s, and they're having fertility issues. I mean, there's a deeper thing because we have our psyche and our spirit, and if that is not aligned, that's why we in holistic medicine deal with all. But this is like a very great imbalance for, and it's, you know, within the men in our culture having dysfunction, and that, you know, in that, you know, in their 50s, 60s. I'm not saying like all men, but this is a common thing that I am noticing, and the women are saying like, what's going on? And a lot of times men don't want to, you know, take the advice of their wives to take care of themselves, want to do what they want to do. So this becomes a problem. So I was just
So this is a question, and I think this is a question that we need to address. And I think we need to address this urgently. So, Sister Linda, I think Moreh has been after me to make sure that we do health presentations regularly. This is a matter that is critical and is crucial, and that we need to address it, because I'm seeing that as well. But what I'm seeing is psychosomatic problems. I'm seeing masturbatory syndromes that's associated with that. But I'm also aware of the way in which the adversary has been genetically modifying food and so on with the intent of causing sexual dysfunction in the second and third generation. So these are questions that we need to address. So I'm very pleased that you've raised this.
Yeah. Well, I just wanted to show something, and it's pertaining to the lesson and what I shared with you about when I said about the destruction of our generation, and you led right into it with our food. But what I want to show you is what they're doing to our elementary. These are elementary kids that you're seeing. The lyrics, you will have to go on YouTube and see them, listen to them for yourself, and they will be appalling. But this is what's being directed into our 6, 7, and 8-year-old children here in the States. So I had to get my Isha, because you know I am challenged when it comes to showing stuff. And she's going to go ahead and show it, and it's short, so I'm gonna let her. Yeah, well, the teacher changed the lyrics, but you would have to go to YouTube and actually hear
Mhm.
the lyrics.
Mhm.
And I think it was Sexy Red who with the lyrics. But I want you to see this. Did you get it? All right. Can y'all see the screen?
Mhm.
All right.
Okay.
All right. Now you see these kids right here.
Mhm.
And this is a teacher remixes raunchy rapper song to engage her kids. These are our kids.
There's a method for retention. Check this out right here.
When you see me, say you gotta say what's up. Hey, wanna be on my roster, but it's all love. Hey, we be there for learning and we turn it up. Hey, purpose be your desk, hold it up. Hey, when I holler miss, hey, that be turned up. Hey, read it every day to get that scores up. Hey, on the way to success, it ain't no love. Hey, coming tight, so what's up, then it's up.
Now
What you would know is I would tell you to actually listen to the lyrics, because when the kids see, when they recognize her, they will actually start, they know the words, and the words are so filthy and vile that you don't want to listen to it. But that's the mindset that they're putting in the kids. She thought that she was trying to do something to engage them, but that sound and that beat will be with them. And soon as she starts saying something, they're gonna say, "It's all right, my teacher plays." So that's why I said it's upon us to be able to change by teaching our grandchildren, and if you're younger children, what Yah has called our children to be, girls and the boys. So I just wanted to share that.